Crypto's growth in terms of market cap and institutional appeal has exploded in 2021. Indeed, the amount of expansion that has taken place since the beginning of the year has been remarkable. However, crypto's journey over the past 12 months has been even more explosive. In a way, it seems almost as though the institutional moment that Bitcoin believers were talking about in 2017 has finally arrived. Finance Magnate sat down with Diogo, president and co-founder of Anchorage, to speak about how the industry got to this point. Diogo spoke about his views on regulatory clarity, shifts in financial markets, and what's been happening behind the scenes for the past several years. I'm Rachel McIntosh, and this is FMTV.
Diogo, so great to see you again. And for people who might not know who you are, can you just briefly say a little bit about the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Diogo. I'm the co-founder and president of Anchorage. Anchorage is the first federally chartered crypto bank. We offer a platform that allows institutions to build products in crypto. What that means is that institutions with Anchorage can have custody, brokerage, buy and sell. They can do lending. They can generate yield on their assets. They can do staking, governance, all these other elements, including integration with all the blockchains that they desire to integrate with. So it really is a technology platform that is wrapped as a bank.
Fabulous. And yeah, I mean, the last time that we spoke, which I think was in maybe August of last year, something like that, we talked about how Anchorage has this client-driven growth model that you guys are always adding features and new things based on what your clients are asking you. So what has been added? What has changed since the last time we spoke in about August of last year?
Now, one of the biggest things was that clients wanted clarity from a regulatory perspective around the status of a qualified custodian and whether an institution could actually serve them for digital asset custody, for trading, for stable coins, for participating in blockchain, so on and so forth. So one of the things that has changed was in January, we were approved as the first federally chartered crypto bank. We have an OCC charter. This is federal. It's not a state-by-state charter. It was actually a conversion of our South Dakota Trust Charter that we converted into an actual OCC charter, which is really interesting because we were an operating company. We had years of track record. We had billions of dollars of assets under custody and hundreds of clients. And so this transition was recognition from the OCC that we were actually an excellent operating company. And we had now the space has both the technology and the clarity that they're required. So that was a pretty fantastic one. I didn't really think that we could have influenced this directly. Of course, it was one of the things that changed, but the OCC has been really forward-looking and forward-facing, and they had been releasing guidance. They had been releasing guidance letters around the status and the clarity of how OCC regulated banks could do and are able to do and operate with digital custody and participation in blockchains. So that was one of the biggest ones. There was a lot of press about it, and it's a great step for the industry, and it's also a fantastic step for Anchorage, and particularly because it allows other banks to know exactly where we stand in terms of regulation, because we have the same regulatory clarity. We look eye to eye in terms of all the other banks, which is pretty interesting because they're all coming to Anchorage now. All the neobanks and challenger banks, seeing PayPal and Square Cash succeeding, and all the bulge bracket banks that really have specific businesses that they want to do in crypto are all coming in. So that's another thing that has changed. 3 years ago, or even last year, the banks came to us to ask us what they should be doing in crypto. Now they're coming to us to ask us very concrete questions around, can you provide this specific thing? Show me your API for this particular platform. Show me that you can do A, B, and C. And so that's actually pretty dramatic. 3 years ago, what do I do in crypto? Now people are coming to Anchorage and saying, hey, I want to use your collateral administration system so I can actually offer fiat loans to my clients and have crypto as collateral. That's a very specific use case. And the other interesting data point that I would give you is now we are no longer talking to just the innovation groups or the blockchain groups, whatever. We are actually talking to business leads. Specific people under specific businesses with an actual P&L to answer to that want to generate money from this. And that's when the banks are serious.
That is just so crazy. I mean, we're coming up now. This week is the 1 year anniversary of crypto's Black Thursday, which was, I think, maybe one of the last major times that people were like, Bitcoin is dead. It sucks. Crypto is not a thing anymore. Did you think that this would have been possible? You said 3 years ago, you kind of had some interest. 1 year ago, there was more interest. And now here we are today. Did you think that this was possible?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, anyone in crypto will tell you that, anyone actually in crypto has long-term conviction. I think the things that we never know is how long, in what timings. In 2017, which this happened, this massive run up of prices, as we all know, was primarily led by retail. We always knew that there was going to be another side to the bear market. And we always knew that it was actually an accumulation phase for many institutions where they bought in the bottom. And there was also a company building component. The first time institutions were interested were in 2017, but they couldn't really come to the market. There were no liquidity partners. Anchorage offers brokerage. Why? Because we need to source liquidity from all around the market, and our institution should get the best price. In 2017, that wasn't really available. In 2017, the clarity around qualified custody and being able to store with a qualified custodian wasn't there. In 2017, you didn't really have the ability of generating yield from your Bitcoin. So Bitcoin wasn't really a productive asset if you wanted it to be, or all the assets that you were investing, there were no really support for them, right? The institutions that are coming in are not just focused on Bitcoin, even though a lot of them are, in particular, the treasuries. Many treasuries are coming to Anchorage because they want to take a position like Tesla did, $1.5 billion, or Square did, over $200 million. They want to do capital preservation, so they want to do Bitcoin. But many of them want to build projects. They want to issue stable coins. They want to participate in the DeFi ecosystem. Some of them are coming for NFTs. So they're asking us, how do we do custody of NFTs? Which is something that our platform absolutely supports and is able to do. And so they're coming to us for very specific use cases around everything in crypto, not just Bitcoin and capital preservation.
That is just, that's so cool. And you sort of have like a front row seat to all of this building that's happening sort of behind the scenes. Because we, on the sort of outside world, we're thinking like, oh, you see headlines that are like, oh, maybe Apple will invest in Bitcoin, or like, maybe Microsoft is going to do something cryptocurrency related, but you're really seeing it happen.
That's right. And we're here to support those use cases, of course, but those are easy use cases for us. We've been buying and selling Bitcoin for years. We can lend out that Bitcoin and generate yield. We can do all of those things. Those are the basic components of the platform. Really, the interesting things that are happening are more on the bleeding edge. And so it is absolutely amazing and, humbling to have a front seat for all these things that are happening and us seeing, what institutions are interested in, what they're not.
Yeah. So what are you most excited about at the moment in terms of what do you see happening with your clients?
I would say the thing that I'm the most excited about is the neobanks and challenger banks really coming in a meaningful manner. They're coming to space in a meaningful manner. They want to provide to their clients cryptocurrency buy and sell alongside equities, which is, absolutely amazing. And so that is something that they're doing now. They weren't really doing last year, and that PayPal, of course, and Square helped quite a bit with.
Right. Okay. So yeah, lots and lots is happening. So I want to touch a little bit about this idea of regulatory clarity that you mentioned that was sort of driving what you're doing at Anchorage. We've also seen sort of in the greater scheme of things in the United States in particular some movement toward greater regulatory clarity. At least acknowledgement that it needs to happen. So I want to ask you sort of what your thoughts are on the scene in general at the moment. What do you think are the most important things that are happening in the regulatory sphere are for crypto?
Well, there's quite a bit, right? There are things
Okay.
around securities and around the SEC
Mhm.
and a long conversation that has been had and a lot of things that haven't been resolved there. There's also clarity around, just the status of Bitcoin itself. I think there are things happening as these new publicly traded companies are
Mhm.
putting Bitcoin on their treasure sheet. They're actually realizing that, GAAP accounting is not very friendly towards Bitcoin. So there's things
Right.
like that in terms of the treatment, which are regulatory clarity components, or in this case, tax treatment components, that are pretty interesting to think through. And then Anchorage is definitely helping with that. And we're talking to auditors and we're
Okay.
talking to our clients to kind of like help them through this. But things like that now that these things are being used and they're being used by, dozens, if not hundreds of very large companies and corporate treasuries, now they care. And so those things are coming up and up.
Yeah, and you Anchorage is pretty unique in that it has this federal charter, as you mentioned, and a lot of crypto companies are sort of still approaching the United States as sort of like a state by state type thing. We saw Ripple register as a Wyoming company, and Wyoming in particular trying to really establish itself as a cryptocurrency hub. We've seen like the mayor of Miami saying like, "Hey, crypto companies come here." Uh, do you think that this will other companies have the same kind of opportunities that Anchorage had to become sort of a federally regulated entity? Is that going to be something that we see more of in the future?
I think so. It is very
Okay.
clear that a federally chartered a federal charter for crypto is the right thing for the industry instead of doing piecemeal regulation on a state by state basis. the banks know what to expect because they're interacting with the exact same regulatory regime that they do business with. So that is just a major, major advantage. And we've seen the advantage of that when collaborating with all these banks. They really enjoy the fact that we are an OCC chartered bank and are regulated by the OCC. And there's always going to be, different state by state issues and different state regulators that are going to have different opinions. And so, it's everyone's choice. If people actually just want to do a specific type of business, they might be well served by a specific state. That's absolutely the case. For Anchorage, we really want to be a platform for all assets in a bank for all of these services. We want to help institutions build any product they want to in crypto. And to do that, we do need a flexibility and we need the high watermark of being a federally chartered bank.
Right, that makes so much sense. So, do you have any thoughts on the Biden administration and sort of the effect that that might have over cryptocurrency regulation over the next few years? Of course, we've had Janet Yellen, who's come out and said, blah, 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 Bitcoin, it's illicit, like it's inefficient, et cetera, which is, sort of a narrative that we've been hearing for a long time from a lot of people. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the interesting thing is the other side of the coin. That's what gets picked up by the industry and by the media.
Right.
But they start by saying the conversation where there's a lot of value in cryptocurrencies. There's a lot of value in digital currencies. We're thinking about this, and nobody ever covers that, right? It's like we're thinking about this, but there are these issues.
We want the
know
negative
that there are
headlines.
issues. Yeah, that's right. And there's issues. And by the way, Anchorage helps with the charter and with the fact that we're a regulated entity and the fact that we do AML and KYC and meet the BSA and all these other elements of we're helping the regulators because they know they can trust us, do the right thing by them. And they know we are legitimizing this space by actually having this and going towards the highest watermark for regulatory clarity. And so in fact, this is good for the space. Having more banks, having more OCC charters, having more regulation and more oversight is actually really good for the industry because a lot of those questions and those doubts, so to speak, will actually be taken care of the same way that they were taken care of in the traditional markets.
Right, of course. And I also want to ask you about something that happened north of the United States recently, which was the launch of the Canadian Bitcoin ETF. We've been sort of waiting for a Bitcoin ETF on that side of the globe for a very long time. But do you think that this was, this had the same kind of effect that it might have had 2 years ago when everyone was really sort of focused and talking about how important and great a Bitcoin ETF would have been?
Yeah, I still think that there's going to be a major impact in the US
Okay,
when
great.
there's an ETF in the US. Yes. And I do think that the clarity around qualified custodian and actually having a bank that has the regulatory clarity and the technology to do custody is going to be one of the major unlocking functions in going forward and having one of these ETFs approved. The other thing that we have to think about is that it's a very different market from when the ETFs were rejected, right? In terms of
Yes.
liquidity, in terms of all of these other aspects, regulatory clarity, number of platforms in place. So the space is in a very different level of maturity. And that is one of the things that it seems like the regulators were really waiting for. And so I think we are there now. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get an ETF in the United States at some point soon.
Some point soon. Okay, great. That's what I was going to ask you, because this has been such a sort of important piece of the conversation for such a long time that it's almost it's been talked about so much that people have almost forgotten about it. You know what I mean? Like it seems like it's kind of gone on the back burner as these other pieces, as you said, have come into play over the last 2 to 3 years.
But it will definitely help. The reasons why people are excited about them are still there, right? The ease of integration of an ETF with all these financial platforms out there, it's still unparalleled to all of these other current existing funds or vehicles for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. It is a little bit behind the curve. A lot of people that wanted to have Bitcoin exposure have already gotten away to have Bitcoin exposure, but it'll also create price competition. And there's a lot of premiums on the current funds and market, which might actually come down whenever there's an ETF, and ETF competition itself will also be better for the space. So I'm also excited about ETFs just going, beyond just Bitcoin. And once they're approved, I predict that there's going to be a lot of them and a lot of them for other crypto. Not just Bitcoin, right? Because once you've created the first one, once you've oiled the gears, now the gears actually start turning and hopefully churning out very high quality funds.
It's a gateway drug.
I wouldn't describe it that way, but sure.
Yeah. Okay, great. But yeah, so and I want to ask you also. So obviously, since the last time we spoke, and when I mentioned earlier Bitcoin's Black Thursday, which happened almost exactly 1 year ago today. Today's March 8th that we're recording this interview. We've seen a massive increase in the price of Bitcoin. Not only that, like the market cap of all cryptocurrencies and a lot of DeFi coins in particular has just absolutely exploded. I'm just curious on, do you think that what kind of meaning does that have for the space? In summer, for example, last summer in the DeFi space, there was a lot of cash flowing in, but not necessarily sort of an equivalent amount of users that were coming along with that cash. It was sort of like people who were already in the space were just sort of investing more and more. Um, do you think that those kinds of trends have changed? What does the increase in the amount of capital really mean for the space in a practical way?
Well, in a practical way, when you increase supply or when you increase demand, right,
Yeah.
and supply stays constant, the price is definitely bound to increase. So
Hmm.
that's definitely the dynamic here that we're seeing.
Yes.
I think the major difference is the type of capital is different. The capital that
Mm.
we're seeing is capital coming in because they now believe in the space, and they are not retail holders that are looking for. They're looking for just the speculative increase. Institutions are looking for capital preservation or are looking for diversification, and they are smart, sophisticated investors, and they're looking to the space as a long-term potential. They're not looking for the short-term
Hmm.
potential of appreciation. And that's very different when we have that capital, because that capital is bound to have a longer time horizon than the retail capital that is just looking for, take advantage of the volatility in one direction. So that will hopefully stabilize the price of Bitcoin going forward in a way that
Hmm.
wasn't really the case for 2017. So hopefully we would see less volatility in the future than we've seen in the past. That price discovery also helps with that. More liquidity into the lending markets also help with that. An ETF will also help with that. There's quite a few things that are helping with price discovery and hopefully the reduction of volatility of the asset class. But the difference is these investors are long-term holders. They're using this as a
Hmm.
portfolio allocation strategy. They have the long-term vision. And some of them, a lot of them, are also building products here. So they're committing to the space over the long run. So the value that they're bringing to Bitcoin is not just the value of buying into Bitcoin and obviously reducing some of the supply from the market or increasing demand. It's also that they're building products that will do that
Hmm.
themselves. So somebody buying off of a corporate treasury and adding buy and sell for their banking application to crypto is bringing in more demand. It is legitimizing the space, legitimizing cryptocurrencies. And then once it's legitimized, once we have the technology on all these wallets of all these banks, it becomes so much easier for somebody to hold stablecoin instead of actual US dollar on their account, or doing a smart contract transaction, or even be used to, right? We need these things to enter mainstream as used to participating in one of these assets. If they're alongside your bank account and one is USD and the other one is USDC, or one is USD and the other one is XUSD, Libra, it doesn't, or DM, doesn't really matter what it is. It is to you as dollar. It has different implications, but it is the same context. And that's really going to be a big unlocking feature, because then all of the cool participation features and some of the things that are happening in DeFi are preclude that you do understand and you have a wallet and you are
Hmm.
participating in this ecosystem. And so there's quite a few things here to consider. It's not just the capital coming in and long-term potential and diversification and institutions just having a longer time horizon, but it's also that institutions are building products, are increasing themselves, the demand, are looking at this space for the long term, even from a business P&L perspective, building products in this space. So that's really the most important part for us, and really what Anchorage allows them to do. We are built for institutions to build products in crypto and to have a safe partner to do so, with all the regulatory clarity, all the liquidity, all of the security, all these other elements. So that's really what we see the win is in 3 years, when all of these use cases are built on top of Anchorage and all of these products are there, you can use them. Your apps allow you buy and sell Bitcoin alongside, having any kind of other financial instrument. And that's just part of mainstream. That's going to be the ultimate win for us.
So cool, so exciting. So, what should we be paying attention to over the course of the next several months? Into the end of 2021.
So I am interested to see how the NFT boom is going to
Yeah,
look like.
definitely.
People like Jack Dorsey selling their first Twitter, setting up my Twitter, is obviously bringing a lot of media attention. And blockchains like Flow are having tremendous
Mm.
success, not just price appreciation, but they are tapping it into a market. And the NBA, Top Shot, and all these other products slash interesting opportunities that are coming out in the NFT world are really booming. And so this is, of course, the topic du jour. And I still remain very excited about the decentralized insurance markets. So the Nexus
Hmm.
Mutuals and the products that are coming out of that are super interesting. It is always absolutely amazing to see stable coins rise in this manner and becoming legitimized as an actual form of holding fiat equivalent on any wallet, or really the yield that you can generate off of a stablecoin that you can't generate off of the dollars on your bank account. So all these things are happening also simultaneously, and I keep tracking them because they're just so exciting to see. It truly is crypto becoming mainstream very slowly, or in this case, very fast in the case
Yes.
of stable coins.
Yeah, absolutely. And any announcements for Anchorage? Anything that you'd like to share? Where can our listeners find out more about Anchorage and about you?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Diogo Monica, and Anchorage is at anchorage.com. Feel free to ping us if you're looking to build any products in crypto. We can help.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Diogo. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for having me.
For more news, events, and podcasts like this one, visit financemagnates.com. Thanks for listening.